From unsolved mysteries to unexplained phenomena, from comedy gold to relationship fails, Amazon Music's got the most ad-free top podcasts, included with Prime. Because the only thing that should interrupt your listening is, well, nothing. Download the Amazon Music app today.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, S-H-O-W, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, you can text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 to get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, the 4 things to know in the afternoon. Everything you need to know is right there. Just text Eric to 33777. Remember, it's E-R-I-C-K. Now, I got to spin in a whole segment on this situation. Do you know what epistemic closure is? I'm just going to read you from the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Epistemic closure is a foundational principle in epistemology stating that if a person knows a proposition, P, and knows that P entails another proposition, Q, then they also know Q. The principle suggests knowledge extends through deductive reasoning, but is debated because it can lead to skeptical, self-referential paradoxes. Now, if that blows your mind, let me just put this to you another way, that you come to believe something so fundamental that you are unable to change your mind on it. You are closed to any insight and data that could get you to change your mind. Paul Ehrlich is dead. He is on his way to making biodegradable, biorenewable energy. Paul Ehrlich died. If you don't know who Paul Ehrlich is, the man was a Malthusian who destroyed many, many, many lives. There is nothing good you can say about this man. In his book in 1968, The Population Bomb, he forecasted global famines, and it made him a leader of the environmentalist movement. And the environmental movement and the climate movement morphed from Paul Ehrlich into the mass hysteria that we've seen from climate alarmism that has caused so many people to be dismissive of things like climate change. And I want you to just hear how the New York Times referred to all of Paul Ehrlich's predictions that never came true. Quote, he faced criticism when his predictions proved premature. Let me just read you the opening of this. Paul Ehrlich, an eminent ecologist and population scientist whose best-selling book, The Population Bomb, was celebrated as a prescient warning of a coming age of food shortages and famine, but later criticized by conservatives and academic rivals for what they called its sky is falling rhetoric, died on Friday in Palo Alto, California. He was 93. His death at a nursing facility in a retirement community where he lived was caused by complications of cancer, his daughter Lisa Marie Daniel said. As a young professor of biology at Stanford University in the mid-1960s, Dr. Ehrlich was known for his absorbing lectures on evolution, in which he described what plants and animals faced on a planet stressed by industrial pollution and rapid population growth. He distilled those lectures into an article published in December 1967 in New Scientist magazine. 6 months later, encouraged by David Brower, the executive director of the Sierra Club, to write a book on the subject, Dr. Ehrlich published The Population Bomb. In 233 pages, he asserted that the planet's condition began to deteriorate rapidly in the 1950s when the rate of population growth exceeded the increase in food production, or as he put it, where the stork passed the plow. He called on couples to limit their families to 1 or 2 children. Witty, knowledgeable, and not at all reticent, Dr. Ehrlich gained a huge audience on television, especially on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, where he appeared roughly 20 times. His forecast of food riots in the United States and of imminent global famines caused by escalating population growth found a worldwide readership. What the New York Times struggles to acknowledge is that Paul Ehrlich was often wrong. In fact, you have to get down almost to the bottom of the obituary to get to, quote, such bold predictions, some of which turned out to be premature or in error, prompted rivals in business and academia to question the validity of his claims. In 1980, Julian Simon, an economist at the University of Maryland, challenged Dr. Ehrlich and 2 of his colleagues with what Stuart Brand, the founder of the Whole Earth Catalog, called one of the great revelatory bets. Convinced that the growing population would make natural resources even more scarce and thus drive up costs, Dr. Ehrlich accepted Mr. Simon's challenge, betting that the prices of 5 key metals would rise in the 1980s. Mr. Simon believed that innovation would drive prices down. In 1990, Dr. Ehrlich and his colleagues conceded defeat and sent Mr. Simon a check for $576.07, an amount that represented the decline in the metal's prices after accounting for inflation. The disclosure of the bet came amid a national backlash to American environmentalism in the early 90s, led by free market conservatives and industrial executives who questioned the movement's scientific data. Now, Dr. Ehrlich and his wife defended his predictions, and you will note that Paul Ehrlich made his wife sign the check. He refused to put his signature on the check. And you will note the New York Times framing that it was free market conservatives and industrial executives who disparaged and disputed Paul Ehrlich. Actually, it was a lot of academia that did it, and he is roundly condemned today by people on the left, the right, and the center. But people on the far left loved Paul Ehrlich, and they refused to acknowledge how wrong he was on so many things. This is Paul Ehrlich from 1970 in a discussion on television. You got to listen to this to understand what a malignant force he was.
Now, given the population explosion, let alone in this country, what ought the government to do about this?
Well, what it ought to do is this. The first thing, you don't want to put, I'm against government interference in our lives. You want to minimize that. So the very first thing the government should do is try and take the pressure off to reproduce. There's a lot of pressure in our society now to reproduce. If you're single, people try and push you into getting married. You know, your wife, you have a bachelor over and your wife says, gee, shouldn't I have a nice girl over? The idea is, nobody should escape. So there's pressure to get married. Young couples, if they don't have children, people say, gee, they must be sterile. They never say, gee, maybe they like good wine and going to the theater and so on. They prefer that to scraping diapers. So there's pressure to have children. So the first thing that should happen is that the president ought to say, from here on out, no intelligent, patriotic American family ought to have more than 2 children, preferably 1, if you're starting a family now. Not any law, but just say this is what responsible people do. He ought to make the FCC see to it that large families are always treated in a negative light on television wherever they appear. There ought to be a tremendous amount of television time devoted to spot commercials, the sort we've had against smoking. But the ones in the middle, say in the middle of Beverly Hillbillies, you get a scene which shows Los Angeles and the smog, and it just says this city has a fatal disease. It's called overpopulation, and so long. Now, that sort of campaign, you could have a census, a sample census, which would see whether that was having the desired effect. If that didn't, you could move to giving women bonuses for not having babies. That almost certainly would do the job. If that didn't have the effect, then you could move to changing the tax structure so that people who had the money and had the children paid for the children. In other words, you would increase taxes on people with children rather than decrease them, since when they have the children, they require more services. If that doesn't work, then you'll have the government legislating the size of the family. And people say, oh, that's impossible. Government can never intrude and tell you how many children to have. Well, I got news. It intruded a long time ago and told you how many wives you can have. And there's not the slightest question that if we don't get the population under control with voluntary means, that in the not too distant future, the government will simply tell you how many children you can have and throw you in jail if you have too many.
That was Paul Ehrlich in 1970. Just on television, encouraging this. Let me just give you the ongoing claims that Paul Ehrlich got wrong and that the media still trotted him out on. He demanded the FCC require, as I just played you, the TV shows depict large families badly. He proposed forcibly sterilizing millions of Americans by poisoning the water supply to make them infertile. He couldn't think of a drug to do it safely, but wanted to try it anyway. He supported forced sterilization campaigns in India and China. He wanted the population growth. He believed that population growth would lead to starvation. He proposed cutting off food aid to overpopulated countries to reduce their populations by starvation. He was a monster, if you will. He got so much wrong, constantly got things wrong. Paul Ehrlich, in 1968, said the battle to feed all of humanity is over. In the 1970s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death. In the 1970s, he said in 10 years, all important animal life in the sea will be extinct. In 1971, he said, I would take even money. England will not exist in the year 2000. Let me read you this. CBS News, 60 Minutes, trotted him out not that long ago to talk about climate and talk about the earth.
Finding solutions to the problems was the goal 2 weeks ago at the UN Biodiversity Conference, where nations agreed to conservation targets. But at the same meeting in 2010, those nations agreed to limit the destruction of the earth by 2020, and not one of those goals was met. This despite thousands of studies, including the continuing research of Stanford biologist Paul Ehrlich. You know that there is no political will to do any of the things that you're recommending.
I know there's no political will to do any of the things that I'm concerned with, which is exactly why I and the vast majority of my colleagues think we've had it, that the next few decades will be the end of the kind of civilization we're used to.
In the 50 years since Ehrlich's population bomb, humanity's feasting on resources has tripled. We're already consuming 175% of what the earth can regenerate. And consider, half of humanity, about 4 billion, live on less than $10 a day.
Now, I want you to think about this. That book was so wrong, Paul Ehrlich lost a bet in 1990 and had to have his wife sign a check. And yet 60 Minutes in 2023 was trotting him and his book out as if it was true. Paul Ehrlich in 1970 said, enjoy what little time you have left. The point for me is 1972. In 2014, he said, we will soon be asking, is it perfectly okay to eat the bodies of your dead because we're all hungry? In 2018, he said places like Miami are going bye-bye in the relative near future. He also said, sure, I've made plenty of mistakes over several decades, but I've gotten a lot of awards and my friends agree with me. And as everyone knows, the appeal to authority is one of the most powerful arguments one can make. This is actually what he said. 60 Minutes Extinction Story has brought the usual right wing out in force. If I'm always wrong, so is science, since my work is always peer-reviewed, including the population bomb, and I've gotten virtually every scientific honor. Sure, I've made some mistakes, but no basic ones. Now, let me just read you the most tragic bit of all of it. In his 1968 book, The Population Bomb, Paul Ehrlich famously declared that unless countries engage in population control, hundreds of millions of people are going to starve to death in a race to oblivion. He was wrong. Sadly, though, the Stanford University biologist claims helped drive human rights abuses around the world, from forced sterilizations in India to forced abortions under China's disastrous one-child policy. Interestingly, Sunita Narain, head of the Center for Science and Environment, a New Delhi think tank, blames government planning, not birth rates, for the extreme crowding that first inspired Mr. Ehrlich. Similar lessons apply today. That was one letter from Francois Melisse of Pacific Grove, California, to the Wall Street Journal. Let me read you the next letter. This is from Kenneth Emdy of Woodbury, Minnesota. I was a college student when I read Mr. Ehrlich's The Population Bomb. I took it to heart and now have no grandchildren. But 50 years later, the population has increased to 8 billion without dire consequences. I was gullible and stupid. Kenneth Emdy, Woodbury, Minnesota. Paul Ehrlich, during his entire life, got virtually every single prediction he made wrong. And because the left in science insisted he was right, they continued to elevate him because their minds were closed to the idea that they could be wrong. And they've doubled down on their wrongheadedness, and they have discredited themselves. And now they pitch mass hysteria about climate change, and no one listens to them because they've never, ever had the humility to recognize that they were wrong, including Paul Ehrlich, who lost a bet made famous because of his dire predictions of the costs of metals in the world, and instead those commodity prices went down as we adapted along the way. A man who believed in evolution lacked the belief that we could evolve and change to manage the population and the planet and steward its resources. This man is now going to become, over time, a fossil fuel, and the future will laugh as they pump their oil about Mr. Ehrlich, who ultimately will be forgotten. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Welcome back. I gotta just say this, and I don't mean this to be a controversial or offensive take to anybody. So I went to the Players on a Players Championship on Saturday, and I didn't like it. I mean, the course was beautiful, and I got up close with several of the players, some of whom are listeners. But the Masters is like a religious experience for golf, and no phones are allowed, and people, you're not running, you're not allowed to run, you walk. The place is beautiful. Everything is gorgeous, manicured, and you're there for the golf. And there were so many people at the Players. Some were there to pound beers. Others were there to I mean, there were women in high heels, for God's sakes, at a golf course. It's like, lady, what are you doing? They come in for like their spring pictures with their families, like they're taking their Easter pictures at the Players. And it was just a weird setup to me. It's I don't know, this sort of stadium thing. Like I don't know. I would love to actually go to the Waste Management one, but it's kind of the same thing. People are there to get drunk and to pound as many beers as they can, and golf is kind of ancillary to the experience. And I mean, it's like the Masters, you're walking into the Vatican of golf, and everybody is reverential, respectful, and you're there for the love of the game. And the Players, you're there to be seen. And by the way, can I just say, if you're trying to take a picture of somebody, snap the picture and get out of the way. I'm not going to get out of your way. You expect to have people in the background. The number of older people there are like, wait, 5 minutes, I got to set up the shot. Just take your picture and move on, people. Old Glory Bank is my bank. They could be your bank. And I love Old Glory Bank. They were started by a group of conservatives concerned about the debanking trends during the Biden regime. And they started a bank to protect your freedom to bank as you choose, to your ability to go use your debit card as you see fit, not to be restricted by the progressive agenda, not to be debanked. And now that Trump is president, you don't really have to worry about those problems, and they're still one of the fastest growing banks in the country. They're about to be listed on NASDAQ. They're a wonderful bank, wonderful people, and you can go to oldglorybank.com/Eric and find out more. And if you are active duty military, veteran, first responder, Old Glory Bank is going to take care of you. Active duty military, you get some fees waived if you want the premium checking accounts. I got the basic ones. I got the no fee checking, no fee savings, and they're still great accounts. The online bill pay, the app, everything is great. The debit card is a beautifully designed debit card. oldglorybank.com/Eric. They do mortgages, they do CDs, they do business checking, business lending. Check them out, oldglorybank.com/Eric, oldglorybank.com/ERICK, member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. Welcome back. All right, so I was intending to move on to the next topic, but I gotta expand this from several listeners, and I got a very fine note during break from a person who works for the PGA. I would love to take you up, by the way, on playing the stadium course at TPC Sawgrass. The Players Championship this weekend. This isn't a golf show, but as you can tell, I'm getting a little golf nutty. There were. The crowd, I'm not a huge people person. Like, I get physically exhausted from being in crowds. And I actually was given tickets to the Intracoastal Club, which was one of those venues where you can go and sit, and they had couches and stuff. And I sat in the shade for a while and just kind of decompressed during the day. But what what struck me are the number of people who weren't really there so much for the golf as they were there to be seen. It was kind of like a social happy hour for a mass number of people. And I've been to the Masters, and the Masters really is, you're there for the golf, and you run into people, you have conversations with people, no cell phones are allowed. And that was the thing that stood out to me, the number of people who, and I got some great photos up close with several of the players. But the number of people who would be standing there trying to get a picture of their friend, waiting for the crowd to move as if they wanted the crowd to stop. Like, just take your picture, people. You got 1 million people here. Just take your picture. I'm not stopping for you. It was just, I don't know. I was overwhelmed with the players going into the merch shop. I mean, you go in Augusta and it is a long line and a crowd, and you could just walk right in to the one at the Players Championship, but you were shoulder to shoulder inside. It just, I don't know. I was overwhelmed by the crowd and just the different environment. It was more rowdy, and I really do want to go to Waste Management. I know some of the people involved with it, and I know I would be completely overwhelmed, but I just want to go see and experience Waste Management. And also, can we stop with, like, I don't know, I'm a Miller Lite guy or Coors Light guy, and just the Michelob Ultra everywhere, just not my favorite. Just, I don't know. It was a beautiful course, a beautiful clubhouse, up close and personal with a number of the players. Got some great pictures, but it's just, I was overwhelmed with people and the boisterous nature of it all. And I'm completely flummoxed by the people who were kind of dressed in like their Sunday best and high heels coming out to take pictures at Sawgrass with 1 million other people around. I don't know. I kind of like the more reverential, quiet, calm golf tournaments where you're there for the love of the game, not to be seen as a social happy hour. And I have been told if you went on a Wednesday or a Thursday, it would be more calm, and that Saturday kind of is the party day, and definitely Saturday was the party day. Now, none of you care about that. I will move on to things that people do care about, including, I don't know if you know this or not, the government's still shut down. Homeland Security is still shut down. The wait times at airports around the country are continuing to grow to ridiculous waits. In some places, it is forever. Right now, for example, I'm looking in Atlanta. There is no wait time for pre-check. But for domestic check-in, it's 36 minutes on the main checkpoint, 34 minutes for the north checkpoint. It's 23 minutes at the international terminal, which is actually kind of unusual for there to be that long of a wait at this time of day in the middle of the day in Atlanta. In New Orleans right now, it is a 3-hour wait at New Orleans Airport. In Houston, Texas, the other day, it was a 5-hour wait, and TSA agents are continuing to not show up. And finally, Democrats are beginning to be asked tough questions on television about the shutdown. But so very few of them are being challenged. It's starting to happen, but it's becoming an irregular thing. We're in a war with Iran, whether Republicans want to call it that or not, and the Democrats have shut down the Department of Homeland Security. Mark Warner, the senator from Virginia, is trying to do some sort of compromise where he claims that they want to reopen Homeland Security, get everybody paid, but not Border Patrol and not ICE. The problem is that ICE and Border Patrol are funded, and what Mark Warner actually wants to do is to cut the budgets of those two agencies, recall the funding, shut them down, and reopen everything else. It's a sleight of hand that a number of people in the media are allowing the Democrats to get away with, to claim that they are willing to open and fully fund the government, but that's actually not the case. They don't want the government to be open. Karl Rove was on Fox News talking about this issue.
Warning that the terror threat has risen to levels not seen in decades after 4 attacks across the country just since March 1st alone. Let's bring in former White House Deputy Chief of Staff Karl Rove. He's also a Fox News contributor. Good to see you, Karl. You look at those airport lines amid this shutdown and you say, I mean, we got to do something about this. The American public is extremely frustrated with what is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, shutdowns are losers for anybody who is provoking a shutdown. This is a big loser, in my opinion, for Democrats. People don't like seeing those long lines. There's been no compelling case made by the Democrats as to why the reforms that they are suggesting are so essential. The public is focused on those pictures, and they're focused on the stories they're hearing from people who are going through that process. And they're also concerned, and will be increasingly concerned, about what would happen to our country if, at our borders or inside the United States, Homeland Security was not able to meet its responsibility. Message to the Democrats: find yourself an off-ramp, and events are about ready to give you a very good off-ramp that will allow you to get out of this hole and yet even turn this argument on your behalf into something that's durable and might have an impact on the election. But if they keep doing what they're doing, this is a problem.
It is.
Federal officials warning.
It's wild to me to see the double down from the Democrats on this. They're just flat out refusing to engage on reopening Homeland Security unless they can cut Border Patrol and ICE at a time of war where we potentially got terrorists either in the country or trying to come into the country. And they are refusing in all cases to do what needs to be done to reopen the government. And more Americans, by the way, spring break is coming. It's increasingly upon us right now. More and more people around the country starting to travel for spring break, packing airports, trying to go places. And you've got TSA agents quitting because they are exhausted. They're tired of having to work with no pay. They're tired of having to juggle their mortgages. They're tired of having to juggle all their other bills because they're not getting a paycheck from the government. They're on the verge of missing the second paycheck from the government. And the Democrats at this point still are very insistent that they are just not going to do anything to reopen the government because they're feeling no pain. In fact, you got Cory Booker, who was on with Jake Tapper, trying to claim that it is actually the Republicans who are to blame for the shutdown.
Threats to reopen and refund DHS?
So first of all, Democrats have tried multiple times to try to get TSA, CISA, the Coast Guard funded. Republicans have refused time and time again to fund.
Yeah, they want the whole agency funded.
They want the whole agency.
Yeah, they want the whole agency funded. The Democrats don't want to fund the entire agency. What they actually want to do is they want to gut the funding for the previously funded Border Patrol and ICE at a time of war with Iran, which is the insane aspect of this. At a time of war with Iran, they want to keep it all shut down. It's wild to watch these people trying to deny that they're the ones shutting down Homeland Security. And when you go to the airport, you're feeling it. And part of the problem here, frankly, for the poor TSA agents is that unless you go to an airport, you don't really feel this right now. You don't actually feel the impact of the government shutdown unless you go through an airport and you're having to stand in line for an inordinate amount of time. Meanwhile, you've got employees in the Coast Guard and FEMA and TSA and elsewhere who are about to be on their second week without a paycheck. And the Democrats don't care. The Democrats are out there trying to make Republicans own a shutdown. No one even realizes we're shut down unless you go to the airport, but they're compromising our national security, and they simply do not care. They're compromising national security. In fact, what you actually see is this ongoing hatred and hostility on the left towards this country generally, and the Democrats are a part of it as they keep getting pushed further and further left. I want to play you this audio. This is from Joy Reid, who used to have a show on MSNBC talking about the United States versus Iran. Listen to this.
secret police. They have secret police. Our regime is oppressing women, taking away abortion rights, taking away women's rights in like 26 states, some states where they're trying to have the death penalty for having an abortion. They also oppress women. They have the highest rate of women who are in STEM careers. We're kicking women out of the military, out of university. We're saying that DEI means women can't be hired for high positions in the sciences. We're marginally better. And we're doing it for Christianity, they're doing it for Islam, right? Yeah. So it's like we don't get told those things because it would take away the kind of American exceptionalism narrative.
You got that? We're as bad as Iran, according to Joy Reid, that women in this country are oppressed. Really? Really? I mean, really, she really believes women are oppressed in the United States of America, just like they are in Iran. She is saying this without her head covered. She is saying this publicly. There is a level of hate and hostility on the left towards what it means to be an American. And sadly, this is percolating among portions of the right, or we can call them the alt-right, who are really progressives themselves. There are a lot of people who have succumbed to the temptation to hate the United States on the far left and the far right. It's horseshoe theory. They are the same people. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene out there attacking the president for what he's done in Iran, claiming that it doesn't put America first, when actually it very much puts America first. The Iranians have been at war with us for about 50 years, and we finally decided to stand up to them. And what a lot of the experts said could not be done, Donald Trump has done in less than 3 weeks. He's eliminated their capacity at this moment to make war, is grinding them down so that the people of Iran can take their country back. And suddenly, we've got a bunch of people who lack patience. We are really 3 weeks into this campaign, and people are already like, it's so long. They haven't folded. We could have never fought World War II with the mentality of people today. 3 weeks into World War II, people are like, Hitler hadn't surrendered yet. We got to surrender to him. You've kicked the anthill now with Iran, and now you've got to exterminate the ants, or they're going to rebuild and they're going to bite you. What do you want to do? The reality is we're in this now. What you could do is double down in support of American troops, the finest in the world, doing with the Israelis remarkable things that the world is only just starting to realize how proficient and efficient the American military is. Did you know the Chinese funded a massive amount of missiles and drones to Iran, and they all failed? They actually did send Iran the hypersonic missiles, the much touted hypersonic missiles that, if you will recall, the press freak out about, that we've fallen behind the game. They've got them and we don't. Turns out all of them failed when Iran tried to use them. It's just remarkable to me, the people who hate and root against this country in the luxury and comfort of this country. Joy Reid can get out of the country if she wants and go somewhere else. But she wants to stay here and claim to be oppressed while being very wealthy. It is remarkable to me, the vanity of the wealthy in this country who want to cosplay as a poor oppressed victim when they are nothing of the sort. They wish to defame this country to build up their clout. We see it on the left and the right now. The podcast influencers of America, they get the attention by hating the country, and in hating the country, they expose themselves. These are malcontented people who are making lots of money to be malcontented, like the Paul Ehrlichs of the day. The malcontents and the pessimists get the big bucks and they get the attention, and so it incentivizes them to double down on all of that attention and getting the big bucks by rooting against this country and its troops. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, this is the president a little while ago talking about Susie Wiles. If you're just tuning in, she has been diagnosed with breast cancer. It was caught early. She is sitting next to him as he talks about it here.
I want to introduce Susie Wiles, who's fantastic. She's our chief of staff. And she's an amazing person, an amazing fighter, and she announced a minor difficulty, which will be in good shape for, he'll be around for a long time. She had a diagnosis, you probably saw it, and she's going to take care of it immediately as opposed to waiting. She said, let's do it now. I said, do it immediately, because with that particular ailment, the faster the better. That's the only thing I know about it. The faster the better. She's going to do it immediately. So she just started, actually, and she's going to be in great shape. The prognosis there is excellent.
Good. Good. Prayers for her as she battles breast cancer. My wife and I, when we got married, so my wife has an extraordinarily bad history of breast cancer in her family, and she got a prophylactic mastectomy, it's called. It's a preventative mastectomy. When we first got married, it'll be 26 years this October. And it was actually, I remember it because we were in the hospital. It was the inauguration of George W. Bush in January 20th of 2021 when we were in the hospital, her undergoing her surgery. The thing that was so frustrating then, and it's still so frustrating now in many cases, is a lot of doctors try to downplay the reconstructive aspect of it. And, we're going to get in, we're going to remove tissue, and then we're going to do plastic surgery. And you're going to be good as new. And in her case, in the case of so many women, that wasn't actually the case. They had to put in chest expanders. And every week for, I want to say, 6 months, I had to drive her to Atlanta, where they slowly expanded these the things in her chest. They filled them with fluid over time to stretch out muscle slowly so that they could do reconstructive surgery on her. And it was every week for like 6 months. And then she had to have more surgery. And then she went through multiple reconstructive surgeries. And it's gotten better these days, I do believe, than that. But it was so frustrating at the time. So prayers for Susie Wiles as she goes through this situation. But yeah, catch it early and battle it and fight it. Just what an awful disease. I need to tell you about my Eden Pure Thunderstorm. I used them in my hotel room the other night because, someone had, used the bathroom and the shower and it got clogged in the pipe. It was gross, but my Eden Pure Thunderstorm took care of the smell. You can get 3 of them for less than $200. Well, so you save $200. And you get them, and they wipe out odors. If they don't wipe out odors, and they wipe out odors, I keep one in my travel bag just for a situation like this, unexpected. Thankfully, the hotel was able to take care of the situation, but the Eden Pure Thunderstorm helped as well with odor. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3, ERICK, the number 3, no space, at EdenPureDeals.com. You get a money-back guarantee. See the site for details if they don't wipe out odors. Now, they're an air purifier, too, and they're filterless. You don't have to get a filter subscription, and they also wipe out bacteria and viruses, but where they shine is odor elimination. They generate ozone, which acts as odor bleach and wipes out any odor. Get 3 of them and save $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3. They got a money-back guarantee. See the site for the details on that, but they will work for you to wipe out odors.